The Memorial Union Recreation Center, now named the MU Basement, provides the Oregon State community a place to be recreational. The bowling alley opened in 1960 in a new west wing of the Memorial Union and has since become a vital part of the campus. However, what many do not know is just how close Oregon State was to losing this piece of history forever. On May 25, 2006, the Memorial Union Board of Directors held a meeting to hear from MU Basement student employees who were concerned about the fate of the bowling lanes in the campus recreation center. Michael Henthorn, director of the Memorial Union, remembers that fateful day.
I'm Michael Henthorn, director of the Memorial Union, and I've been at OSU almost 23 years. And in that time, I've always had some level of supervision or administrative responsibility that involved the MU Recreation Center, which we later named the Basement. So the Basement has had a variety of levels of staffing over the years. When I first arrived here in 1987, there was a full-time employee who ran the basement along with a cadre of students, maybe about 14, who kept the place running. We eventually found that we could not afford a full-time employee and all the benefits. And we went to a graduate assistant and operated with a graduate assistant as a supervisor of that unit for probably about 9 years. Somewhere in and around 2004, we really began seeing some significant drop in revenue. We went from the high 140, 160 range down to about 120. And as we saw that drop in revenue, the labor to manage the basement became a much more significant percentage of our cost of operation. Rather than being a typical 55% range of revenue, we were suddenly seeing it up in 60, 70% of revenue, which doesn't give you much money to do much else other than keep the door open. And so money for reinvestment, money for supplies, money for marketing, money for programming just wasn't there. Everything was going back into the salaries of the graduate assistant and the hourly wages of students. So we decided it was an area that we should watch for a while to see what would happen. And we came up with some programs and came up with some ideas. We did a new paint scheme. I think the name change came in and around that time to see if we could hype students into coming in. Following year, instead of the $4,500 loss that we experienced in 2004, 2005 saw a $15,000 deficit at the end of the year. And that was just simply too much. So we began scheming about other things that we could do with this space. And we looked at it for all sorts of reasons. But it has a physical problem in that the bowling alley end of the facility has no exit at the end of the alley, obviously. The only thing back there is the pin setters. And so you cannot physically convert this space unless you provided for exiting. So if we were going to do something other than a bowling alley, we would have to make yet another way out. And that way out could cost as much as $1 million. So converting the space became very, very expensive. So We watched the program over the course of the year, and by mid-year we knew we were somewhat in crisis because we were on the path of losing up to $30,000. So late in the year we began talking with the board of directors, which is an all-student board, about what to do. And they were very concerned about the crisis of financial condition. And they also knew that converting it to some other purpose was an expensive proposition, and it was money we didn't have at the time. So their intent was simply to mothball the space, to close it and to not do anything with it, and for us to take a year to think about it. Somewhere along the line in mid-May, when that decision was making its way back to the staff in the basement, 3 of the undergraduate student employees at the front desk in the basement decided they didn't want to see that happen. They didn't want to see the basement be mothballed and locked up while we thought about what to do with it in the future. And so they asked for permission to come and talk with the board. And so on May 25th, 2006, those 3 students sat with the board of directors and talked about what values they had seen the basement provide to the campus. They had an idea that if we gave them a little bit of time, they could come back to the board with a full-blown proposal about how to staff it, how to operate it, how to manage it differently, how for it to be advised differently within the organization, and to show the board a different picture of a future than the one that it had been experiencing. So they had 2 weeks to come up with their plan. And the first thing that we agreed to was that a single advisor over all aspects of the basement wasn't getting the job done. And what the basement really needed was someone who was an expert in each of its 4 major dimensions. So what we agreed to do was that I, as director, would do the administrative and sort of staffing functions of the basement. Jerry McGuire, Assistant Director for Business Services, would do the budgetary and fiscal dimensions. Sid Cooper, who is Assistant Director for Building Services, would advise the basement on its physical plant and its equipment maintenance dimensions. And Kent Sumner, Assistant Director for Marketing, would advise the basement on marketing and advertising issues. The major change that the students came back to the board with was to get rid of the graduate assistant position. A graduate assistant position is an expensive position, and when we wiped that out of the expense side of the equation and reforecast with only undergraduate student employees, suddenly the basement looked a whole lot more profitable. But that alone wasn't going to turn it around. We sort of sat still the following year, did no buying, did no major reinvestments. We just simply wanted to test what is the revenue generating capacity of the basement. The following year we turned a $30,000 profit. And we knew that with that major turnaround, the board would give us another chance to run this program. What we had not experienced at any point in the past was giving a major 9,000 square foot retail enterprise to a group of undergraduate students to run as a full-blown retail area. And the experiment has worked.
My name is Ricky, and I'm a student here at Oregon State University, and I do this as kind of a part-time job. This is my 5th year here. Got a job here my fall term of my sophomore year. That would have been fall 2005. I like the fact how relaxed of a work environment this is. Everyone that comes in is our age, so it's all college crowd. I like the fact that it's right on campus, so it's easy to mix in with your class schedule.